Thursday, March 19th, 2020, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So before I start today, I'd like to thank one of the viewers, and this is her Twitter handle, Saya Sees. She was the individual that put me in contact with Jim Rickards for the interview yesterday. I enjoyed talking with Jim. Hopefully I'll be able to talk with him many more times in the future. Yeah, follow Saya Sees. Yeah, I'm getting the feeling that the subject I talked about with Jim Rickards yesterday about the shutdown of the whole financial system is unfortunately getting closer and closer. But the way Jim Rickards explained it, actually, it's not the end of the world, like he said. It's just trying to calm people down. And one thing interesting that he mentioned is that markets close for the weekend, right? For 2 days. So what's the problem with markets closing for 2 weeks or even a month or even, I think, 4 months like it did at the outbreak of World War I? Even though I don't think it will be closed for 4 months this time. So what am I going to be talking about if the markets and everything shuts? Well, there's plenty to talk about. I got plenty of my books on economics. I've got plenty of ideas every day. And one of them today is to cover the law by Frederic Bastiat. Here's the law. I think now that people pretty much all around the world are going to be stuck indoors, it's time to read up, I think. Of course, some people don't like reading. They're going to watch Netflix, and I do as well sometimes. But this book is really important in my opinion. And why is that? Well, because it looks right now that the people who took us into this crisis, and I'm not talking about the health crisis, I'm talking about the debt crisis, because we all know if our countries didn't have as much debt, if corporations or consumers or governments weren't encumbered by so much debt, if we had saved for a rainy day, we would probably be in much better shape facing this crisis. And that's why I think what the governments and central banks are doing right now is not going to work, because the public credit is tapped out. They already lumbered us with trillions upon trillions of debt after the '08 crisis. U.S. has got over 100% of GDP in public debt. The consumer has a lot of debt. Student loans, car loans, corporate debt. That was another story, of course, of greed, but encouraged by the Federal Reserve monetary policy. And now the Federal Reserve has all the solutions. No, they are the problem. What else have we got? We didn't prepare. We didn't have the savings. As a general public, of course, we've been binging on credit. And so we get a crisis like this where people can't work for a few weeks or a month or two, and they've got no money or savings. We've seen in the last year or so stories about how Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, that they millions and millions upon millions don't even have $500 in savings. So yes, this crisis is bad, but it's not what is causing all the mayhem in the financial market. It was just a trigger, as many people, I'm sure the ECB and the Fed are blaming this health crisis, of course. I saw yesterday the ECB even named their new program. They announced last night 750 billion euros. Where's that going to come from? From thin air. That's going to make Europeans money that they have in their pockets or in their bank. It's going to become worth less and less. How are they going to be able to fight back after things settle down after this crisis if their money is worthless? And that's the only thing Christine Lagarde, who, by the way, is a convicted criminal, French government found her guilty of criminal activity. Once she was French finance minister years ago. This was this conviction, I think, was 2016. They gave her a 1-year sentence, prison sentence, but they dropped it. So here we have this woman doing this, and they even called it the Pandemic Emergency Purchase Program. So you see, they're blaming the pandemic. They're not blaming that it's time that that the creditors have come for their payment. Mario Draghi in 2012 thought there was no consequence of throwing everything at the crisis. He said we'll do whatever it takes, but now it's payback time, and they're blaming a pandemic for it. Blame themselves. It's not going to work. If let's say the EU and countries like the UK and the US only had maybe like 35% of GDP in debt, I would understand maybe that the government should step in. Even then, I wouldn't be for it. And why not? Well, because in the end of the day, governments don't have any wealth. They have to extract it from the public through taxation, through inflation, and through many other means. In the US now, through confiscation as well. President Trump just enacted this 1950 bill that was passed during the Korean War. I think it's Industrial Purchase Act or something Greg Manarino talked about yesterday. And so they can take your business now if you don't play ball with the government. So they can even do that. And that's where we come to the law by Frederic Bastiat. Frederic Bastiat was an economist, a philosopher. He was even in the French General Assembly, in the Assemblée Nationale, which is their Congress. He died, I think, at age 50 in 1850. And he wrote a lot of essays, books. Let's talk a little bit about the law and why I think it's so important nowadays to read upon what Mr. Bastiat said over 150 years ago. It is impossible to introduce into society a greater change and a greater evil than this, the conversion of the law into an instrument of plunder. That's what he said, one of his quotes. So that's basically doing what governments are doing now, guaranteeing failing businesses, central banks in cahoots with the governments, buying government debt and even corporate debt with credit out of thin air that's going to be backed by you. So let's continue. France of 1850 was in political turmoil in the aftermath of the Revolution of 1848. The tide of socialism was sweeping the nation. And I would say this socialism is all over the place. It's not just Bernie Sanders or Jeremy Corbyn that are socialists. Everyone right now has become socialists. One man stood alone against the tide. The precocious son of a merchant, Frederic Bastiat devoured the writings of free trade economists such as Adam Smith and Jean-Baptiste Say. Rejecting the popular notions of his day, Bastiat began to speak and write against ideas he believed were undermining natural harmonies of interest among men. First as an orator and essayist, later as a member of the Legislative Assembly, he became known for withering logic and devastating wit. He also became isolated politically. The struggle between left and right was for power and plunder. Yet Bastiat believed that the only purpose of government was to guarantee individual rights and freedom. Yeah, they will argue now, well, we are in a big crisis, we have to suspend that. Maybe to some extent, but it doesn't mean to say that you have to plunder the public to stop the stock market that you inflated from collapsing. Let it collapse. Let the corporations that didn't save for the rainy day, the actors who didn't save for a rainy day, individuals, I'm sorry, they need to learn from their mistakes. If we keep bailing people out, we will never learn, and we will destroy civilization as we know it, Western civilization. Some people might think I'm too harsh, but the way we're going, it's going to make it even worse. So this is one of Bastiat's most memorable epigram, as the book says here. It's also one of my favorites, and I think it applies totally to what's happening nowadays, especially in the last few weeks. So this is what he said: the state is that great fiction by which everyone tries to live at the expense of everyone else. So how sustainable is that? That's all I have to say about that. So yeah, you can find a free PDF online. I'll put the PDF below in the description. Before I look at the markets, just wanted to say I've seen comments on social media about people who have been going out and buying loads of toilet rolls and other supplies. People saying that they're irrational. What do I think about that? Well, a few weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, I saw what was going on in Italy. And I thought to myself, as a precaution, I'm going to start buying supplies. I didn't go out and buy like a truckload of toilet rolls, but when we went out shopping, I went with my wife, and instead of buying one packet of toilet rolls, 9 toilet rolls, we bought 2 for the next 2 weeks. So we do have some. We didn't go out there and buy, like I said, truckloads of it. So is it irrational to do that? In my opinion, well, if you're seeing that other countries are going on lockdown and they're telling people to stay at home or forcing them to stay at home for a month, and you don't have any supplies, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to take precautions. And yeah, there are people who panic and go into the shops and buy loads of stuff, which is an exaggeration, but trying to get a few supplies more than usual than you need. I don't think it's irrational. It's just common sense. It's a difficult question. There's the question also of gouging. Some people think it's immoral, unethical for shops and businesses to raise their prices. And what do I think about that? Well, to some extent, it actually helps. I'm the home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So this is my contrarian view on this. It's against the mainstream idea. Well, if you are selling toilet rolls and there are people coming and buying dozens of packets, if you raise the price a little bit, those people might not buy as many. And there might be some left for other people. They might have to pay more, but there will be toilet rolls and other things as well. So people need to understand that someone who owns a business and a shop, they need to think about their business as well. If they if they see that the price that they're charging for these goods are very low, considering the situation, and their stock is being like taken away really quickly, maybe raising the prices will keep the stock there for a little longer, and it will actually help other people come and get stuff. So yes, it might seem bad gouging, but if you do the thinking and the logic, it actually is somewhat helpful. So there you go. Those are my ideas. And a little tip for my viewers in the UK today. Yes, we got enough toilet rolls for a while. We might not have enough because I don't know how long we're going to have to stay in the house. What do you do then? Well, we'll have to use our imaginations. But I went this morning just before 7. I drove down and I parked near this small shop called NISA, N-I-S-A, instead of going to the Asda. And I walked in there, and there weren't many people in the shop. It's quite a big one, and they had toilet rolls. So I bought a packet of toilet rolls. You couldn't buy more than one, but it's better than nothing. So what's the tip here? Well, go to the small shops. They call it in the UK the corner shops, Nice, Londis, or whatever it's called where you are. You might have a better chance of getting some important supplies from the small shops, because I think everyone's going to the big shops and there's nothing there. So it's 8:02 a.m. Right now. So this could be one of the last times in a few weeks that I talk about where the markets are. We've got spot gold 1487.50, up 150.1%. Silver's trading around 12, so it's pretty steady. The Dow future is down 184, 19,720. I saw it close down around 1,300 yesterday, but it rallied quite a bit at the close. S&P 500 futures down 24 or 1% at 2380. NASDAQ 100 future down 2/3%. What do I think about trading right now? I think that even if you put on a winning trade, or you have a winning trade at the moment, you have a profit on it and you haven't liquidated, I personally would. I'm not telling you to do it. Why? Well, because if they shut everything down, your trade's still going to be on. And then on the other side of the reopening, the market could be completely at another place, and you probably maybe even have lost all your profits. So the moral right now, or the the strategy, is to avoid the markets, I would say. What about precious metals, getting gold and silver? I think now it's almost impossible to get any physical, not because it's not at the dealers. I think it's because the dealers won't be able to go into work. They won't be able to ship it to you. So right now it's unfortunately too late to get physical gold and silver, at least here in the UK. Currencies, British pound melted down yesterday. It's continued to melt down today. Some people think it's going to go to parity. Saya sees at Saya sees on Twitter. She tweeted yesterday, "Is it going to one to one?" And I said, highly possible. So right now we're at 115.00, down 1% versus the dollar. The euro is down 0.5% at 108.57. The dollar is almost back up to 110 against the yen. So the dollar's rallied quite well. Yeah, there are some of those who said, yeah, the dollar is going to strengthen during a crisis, and it's doing it. But I still think in the longer term, the dollar is going to go down. We're still below the 103.82 high from January 2017, and the dollar index, I don't think we're going to get that high. I think we're above 101 right now. What about the Chinese currency? Well, the dollars continue to rally strongly, which is unusual because I thought the crisis in China was abating, but maybe not. I haven't looked into it. So yeah, the dollar is at 7.11, up 0.5% against the yuan. Crude oil is actually rebounding this morning. And why? Well, because I think it was too oversold. That's how markets are. Extremes. I think crude got down to almost $20 overnight, and now it's at 23.50, up 11% WTI. Bond markets, yeah, they were wild yesterday, the bond markets, especially in Europe. I saw the Italian 10-year yield, which was under 1% before the crisis, go up to 3% yesterday. It was up 60 basis points in one day, and then it came right back down. I saw the 10-year yield go up 20 basis points. We're seeing now T-bill yields in the US as well, negative from 1 month to 3 month. The bond market is very volatile right now. Some people still think we're going to see negative interest rates. It's possible. It's possible. But at the same time, if people lose faith and confidence in the whole system, I would expect them to sell government bonds as well. it's really up in the air right now. That's why I think those who have the precious metals, gold and silver, should be well protected. I'm not saying it's going to go to the moon, but it's going to preserve the value of your savings. So right now, the 10-year yield is down 12 basis points at 114. The 30 years down 13 basis points at 176. So we almost got up to 193. What about the Italian 10-year yield? Well, it's at 153 now. So we've gone from 3% yesterday to 153 now. So it's down 77 basis points this morning, which is huge. And that's because of the ECB announcement. Whether that's going to stay like this, I don't know, because we don't really know what's going to happen. We've never been in a situation where countries are shutting down for weeks or months. We don't know what's going to be on the other side of this. And we have a lot of debt. Don't forget, the Italian government has like 130% debt to GDP. So don't forget, read the law. It will explain to you why I feel a bit annoyed about all this government intervention, central bank intervention, because they're basically trying to help you by taking things away from you. That's what all this stimulus program, monetary or fiscal, is. They're just like they're taking advantage of your credit, of your efforts in the future. They're borrowing against you, and that's not going to work. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. Think about subscribing to the channel, and you can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook, BitChute, Steemit, and DTube. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.